Well, as you can see, I have Aristo with me again today, and the title for this video is going to be Free Will Means Responsibility. And this is video number 2883, and it's being recorded on my birthday, but it's the video for October 22nd. Aristo, take it away.
Hello, Ron. And the video was prompted by, well, first I'd like to say, Ron, happy birthday. I saw your previous birthday thing. You're talking about your 9-year cycle. I hope you fulfill this one and you know, get into the other one, home free, as it were. So let's just get into this topic. This has been an ongoing topic with Ron ever since his operation, I guess, maybe his whole life. So it's a defining issue, regardless of what people think about it or you know, if it's actually, you know, something that draws attention. It is a defining issue. And what we were talking about before we came on here was if it's a religious or a spiritual issue. Ron calls it a spiritual issue. And in my experience, I believe it's a religious issue because expecting an omnipotent personified creator, according to the human evaluation of things, to listen to your complaining and come down and make things right when they are already omnipotent and would have done so in the first place if that's what they were going to do, is a religious mentality. There is nothing spiritual about it. It has nothing to do with internalization, meditation, you know, opening up to the essence of things and understanding for yourself. It's all a dependency. Now, we can argue about this till the cows come home, but what I wanted to do is, because there was almost like a misunderstanding here with Ron about what this topic was going to be, because I had made a comment on another video about something, and but he picked it up that it was about this topic. So let me just read this, just a few paragraphs, and we'll pick up from there, because that's when he said, okay, I'd like to talk about this. And I basically said, although I disagree on the reasoning of blaming an absolute creator, where all of manifestation is flawed and not just on this planet or evolving. Basically, I disagree with the reasoning of blaming an absolute creator in a manifestation that's either flawed or evolving or both. But I also disagree on the idea that such a creator is perfect and has all the bases covered all the time. If you have an evolving creation, for example, it makes sense to believe in an evolving creator. Perfection means frozen. There's nothing, nowhere you can go from there, nowhere where you should go. And it's a human concept, in my opinion. I believe it can, but it's still, you know, I believe a creator can be perfect, but is still learning the ropes, because time is a manifestational dynamic. The creator, so to speak, is beyond time. Otherwise, it would be a manifest being, which means that if the creator has no experience, or if the creator emerges from nothingness, or if the creator has a beginning themselves, if they have no beginning, then everything is contained in them. Creation is already there. There is no beginning for creation either, because at some point, there is some point, but you know, in the creator's domain, there isn't. Everything is always self-existence. There's no such thing as a creation if you have a creator at that level. Everything exists. Even manifesting it and creating a point in time requires a contradiction in the creator's state. You know, that means the creator has to do something they've never done before, which is a contradiction, or at least a paradox. See, this is where our understanding can break down. Thus, the creator is more in terms of a being, not being itself. Being itself is something more, less personified, in my opinion, more like a natural force. It is alive, and it is an emergent ground of potential, and you might say, but it isn't individualized, because it cannot then be everything. All that is so grand, in other words, whether it's the tiniest thing or the biggest thing, and in everything, that it cannot be contained by any concept. To do so would be to limit it. That includes concepts of perfection. Anyways, the creator that we talk about, that has created this, maybe a creator or whatever, but it is a evolving being, or evolving being, period. Because from the moment that being left the state of so-called perfection or omnipotence, which is also an assumption, it means that it's evolving, it's changing, it is growing, it builds on experience. In other words, the so-called creator interacts with time. Now, Ron really doesn't care about this stuff. I mean, what he cares about is what do we do about it? And that's what I was addressing. It's like, okay, this issue is a philosophical one. Let's just take it over there and put it aside and just say, what do we do? Is complaining, because this prayer is not a prayer. A prayer is a state of communion. And the state of communion is not one of complaining. The same old, same old, same old, same old. When is the creator going to get off his ass and do something? We do that to our parents. We do that to our loved ones. We do that to our enemies. You don't do that to a state of omnipotent being. It just doesn't make sense. Now, I want a creator that's like this, that, and the other. Well, that's a projection. Then you are creating the creator. And that's also a religious thing. Now, what I wanted to say in this, and what I wrote here in the response, is that we can agree that no God is going to save us in a manner that takes away from our responsibility to be the embodiment of our salvation. In other words, it hasn't happened, so it's not going to happen. This creation, Deus ex machina, they call that. That means at the last minute, this divinity comes down from the sky or wherever, or out of the woodwork, and saves our asses. And thus, we have no responsibility. We can't do it because there's bad guys that are allegedly almost omnipotent, which is bullshit. They're not almost omnipotent. They're like we are. If you buy into the stories that this is some extraterrestrial, omnipotent, omni-being, then, listen to the shamans in South America, for example, who talk about ayahuasca experiences. Is that how you pronounce it? Anyways. The people go, oh, I met these beings that claimed they were these Anunnaki guys, and they basically said they created everything, and they're the masters, and they did this and that. And the shaman started laughing. Yeah, they always say that crap. They're bullshitters. That's their nature. Don't believe anything they say. All of these claims are lies. No, that's not the way it is. But they are beings that like to do that, and if you buy into it, then you become their food. So if you buy into it, you basically get into this round and round and round, and then you come up with religion, in my honest opinion. So if a being comes down and saves us, I'm not saying it's bad or good, but let's say it would have happened, okay? So it didn't happen, so what do we do now? So religious people are going to be disappointed, but atheists would only say, I told you so. That's fine. It doesn't prove there's a God or isn't a God. It just proves that our conception of it is not the reality. The point is we don't need crutches to open to true hope. That was my point. Crutches can be knocked out from under us when hope is hopium, which is dependency. If we're going to get over dependency on all levels, we cannot think that some parent is going to help us because we never grow up. Now, the thing is, this is very serious. Yes, it is very serious, but you're also talking spirituality, which means immortal soul and blah, blah, blah. The point is that what happens to an incarnation is not going to happen to an immortal soul. But I don't buy that reasoning because then you almost condone suffering. Say, oh, it's just, my soul is fine, my body is what suffers. Unacceptable. What I am moving is that our responsibility is to realize what we can do and never, ever say that this is all I'm only this humble nobody. The only thing I can do is bitch or complain or cry out in anguish. It's like, yes, a child is that. We protect children, but we are the ones who protect children, and children are being abused to vibrate an atmosphere of making us feel helpless as well. If the children get it, nobody's safe. Or what's the point? And the deepest child in us is also vulnerable. In any case, if I am deceived for whatever reason, it is my responsibility to cultivate discernment. So I stop being deceived. I can do at least that much. And we ask, how? Well, it's a human quality. How do I take my hand and grasp something? This is a human quality. Nobody says, move this little finger, move the other finger, move. You don't do that. Little babies do it through trial and error. That's how they learn to walk. That's how they learn to grasp things. And that's how human children learn discernment, trial and error. You will be deceived, but then you realize how. Think, use the brain cells. Now, it cannot be taught completely, this discernment, but there are tools out there. There are spiritual tools that one can use. There are mental tools as well. So truth to me is a deeper and more sacred thing than something superficial or something we can just describe in a few words. Truth is not supposed to piss us off. It empowers and heals us as well as liberates, because, you know, Ron here had mentioned the idea that truth sets you free, but it's going to piss you off first. No, what pisses you off is buying into deception and believing deception is real. Believing in the appearance and not the deeper truth underneath it, because reality is many. Reality can be anything, and the most imposing reality is what we take as the truth. The strongest reality, the one that affects us the most, the one that permeates our experience. That is what we might call, that is not truth. A very good deception can easily imitate that. So the thing is, it's not that reality is a lie or an illusion. Reality is just flexible. It can take any face we want or any face somebody else wants. So part of our growing up is to learn to be able to influence this or create this or do this consciously in some way, to navigate it, if you will, you know, because I'm not going to get into the issue of creating reality or not creating reality. That's up to each person to decide how, when, you know, they will approach this or can approach this, or if they even want to approach this. What I do believe, though, very firmly, is that fatalism and just giving up is not a good thing. It's not in our best interest, and it's not what the truth wants. Our truth, the truth, everything around us. Reality can be more convincing than truth, but the truth is the final essence underlying all realities. That is what you call a spiritual or an essential understanding. It is not a religious one. It doesn't bind you to a specific personified dogma or even a non-personified dogma that demands your bondage. Religion, by definition, demands your bondage, your commitment, but it's not a free will commitment. It's an obligatory one. So again, in any case, discovering truth is not a priority, in my opinion. It is likely the last thing that will come as we move to stand up to face our realities. This is what we have access to. We have access to realities, which is basically how things are for us. Not just how things appear, but the experience of it. So it's not a matter of brushing it off and saying, oh, these are all just shadow plays. They don't matter. It's just a game. For me, that's just avoidance. Again, going back into a child state of turning everything into a game. You can't afford to make it a game. A game is something that you do not commit to. No matter how much you say you commit to it, oh, look at kids, they're committing to the game. No, the kid is, as soon as they get hungry, they'll want to go home and have mom's cooking. And, you know, as soon as, you know, something else pops up, they will stop the game, even if they're really engaged. In other words, yes, no matter how into the game they are, they know at some point the game is going to end. They're not trapped in it. So, and it's not like, oh, you know, we just got into the game so much that we became trapped in it because we're such good creators. It's like, look, you know, no matter how good you are, no matter how trapped you are, anybody like that has contingencies. You know, there are in a greater reality with our other beings, they don't just leave you to suffer. And if they cannot help you because they're weak, then they're in the same boat as you. So this idea that we're in this grander reality and we're just playing things out, that's just like, or suffering is like, doesn't matter. You know, that's bullshit. This is an affliction. You are cruel if you say that, whether you like it or not, whether it's politically correct or not. Because, you know, you are basically, without knowing it, cruel. Because you don't get deeply enough into the empathy to realize that this is not just a matter of learning to escape. This is a far deeper issue. And if it makes us feel as helpless as this, it's an existential issue. You know, and it's not promoting weakness to people. On the contrary, if you see how deep the rabbit hole goes, and it goes all the way, which means it comes out the other end and ends up in you. It goes full circle like the serpent biting its tail. So it is a little more complicated than some creator and blah, blah, blah. And it's a little more complicated than we create our own reality and we just missed the boat or got trapped by our own desire. You know, just look at the bias here about we enjoyed ourselves too much in the desire realm, or we got into this dense thing called matter. There is no such thing as a dense thing. Everything is living divinity. There is no foreign something, a field that consciousness pokes around like a little kid to create, or even lovingly pokes around like, oh, there's God and then there's the clay. No, there's God and goddess. It is an organic copulation, you might say, an organic thing. That's what I feel. This is why I'm talking about it. I feel this. This is my where truth and reality come together for me. Okay, the truth itself just encompasses everything, so words really don't fit, no matter what. But truth and reality come together, and at that point, you can actually start creating imagery or descriptions of what reality, where reality meets truth for you. In any case, what we do know is that there is a system seeking to enslave us, okay? And this system, what we know, is human. It fucks with your head. It fucks with your mind and your awareness, everything. And that is a serious thing. Then, in order to deal with it, you know, it encourages mythic explanations, supernatural explanations, you know, in a way that are debilitating. Because automatically, as soon as you get hit with a supernatural explanation, you're fucked. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? 10-dimensional being, basically. So you try to move forward, and it's coming up from all directions with high technology. I mean, and to that, you're a worm. And then you have the transhumanist agenda coming up and telling you that, well, you know, we're going to have artificial intelligence, and you're going to be a house cat to the computer. You know, and it's going to be superior to you in every way. Do we buy this crap? I mean, this is really crap. Are we going to buy it? So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying is really the so-called biblical thing of wanting to be a prophet, screaming to God until God does something. And in the end, you know what happens to these prophets? They call down God to destroy everybody. That's what they all have done. They didn't say, come down, God, and save people. Come down and get rid of them, punish them, the wrath of God. No, it's their wrath. They're pissed off because they feel powerless and impotent, and so they project that anger onto this divinity, and eventually everybody's screaming and screaming and screaming, and yeah, well, there's a whole bunch of enemies around. They're going to say, oh, look, they're calling to be taken down. The people don't give a shit. They're all asleep or whatever. And the ones that have any spiritual energy or higher consciousness or whatever, they just want to wipe them out. So, you know, of course it's going to happen. So this whole using a biblical account, and I'm saying, you know, in the personal thing with Ron here, and I'm speaking the third person because there is an audience out there, Ron has had a religious upbringing, a very fundamentalist religious upbringing that is down to the core of who Ron Van Dyke is. You cannot separate it unless you undergo a radical transformation that's almost like 10 near-death experiences. Because you go through a near-death experience, and Ron has probably gone through it more than once in some way. And, you know, you can't let go, because when you let go, all you see is the abyss. And that's the only light out there, because maybe the truth is connected to it. It's a reality, but connected to this reality is probably the truth somewhere. You know, so I would urge Ron to look through that's why I keep talking in terms of religious spirituality, shall we say, instead of just, you know, a deeper essence. You know, why do you bring up this? Why do you even mention the word God? You know, well, because, you know, in communicating with Ron and his channel and everything, this is his interface to the truth that, you know, well, I can't really describe it, and he can't, nobody can, but we can draw from it as a source to empower our reality and then bring our reality closer and closer to that truth. That is what sets us free. What pisses us off is that we're not there yet. What pisses us off is that our reality is deceptive. Our reality is hijacked. Our reality is a parasitic dynamic upon our being. You know, that should piss us off. And it also should scare us. Fear is not defeat. Fear is not capitulation. Fear is not an illusion. Fear is simply an awareness of a probability. And being aware of a probability allows us to create a stance in the face of that probability. I speak in terms of generalities. So this conversation was prompted because the title Ron suggested was, Is God Responsible? And my issue was, that doesn't matter. It's like pointing a finger. It's still pointing a finger. You can blame your parents, so let's put it that way. You can blame your parents all your life for all your problems, but in the end, you're the one who's going to have to solve them. Like it or not, oh, my parent was a bastard, let's put it this way. And this is God here. This is the creator. This is the one. It doesn't matter if they're the creator. We're talking about human beings, our modern myths, our Frankensteinian myths, are the creator being a bastard, creating a creation that's more compassionate and better than them, and the creation turning around and bashing the creator. This is the modern myth ever since the Industrial Revolution. Before that, it would have been heresy. Right now, it's prevalent. This whole thing about artificial intelligence, and the transhumanist agenda, and all of that feeds on our inability to take responsibility. And I'm not talking about us humans. No, it's like you have a teacher walking in the room, and there's 5 students that are making an uproar, and everybody else is being good, so to speak, and then blaming the whole class for it. Or why didn't those other students take care of the other ones? Maybe. But no, blame is not what's being projected here. And anybody trying to blame everyone, all humanity, for the doings of a few psychopaths, even if the rest of us are ignorant, we're still human. Then blame the animals for not rising up against the psychopaths or against the Anunnaki or whatever. Come on, blame nature. Then you go back to the God blame again. It just goes round and round. So my thing is, what do we do under perceived circumstances where religious prayer doesn't work? There must be another solution. Giving up, well, then my thing is, let all those who want to give up just give up and leave the rest of us free to do something or figure it out. Because it's noise, either man up or shut up, in other words. That's a harsh thing. But the thing is that creating noise about this only helps the establishment. It does. Having distress is a good thing and should be expressed in one's own domain for the purpose of healing, for the purpose of, circulating the energy, for the purpose of acceptance. But projection is something completely different. We are encouraged to project fallacy. We're encouraged to project negativity because then we are denying it from ourselves and pushing it onto somebody else or something else. That is denial, That's the whole thing. That's where, on the one hand, expressing the negative is a very good thing and should not be denied. You can't be, positive, be positive. Well, that's basically the other person denying themselves and you feeling the impact, and it doesn't feel good. But when you just want to express the negative, and then you're in denial. And so you're both doing the same thing, from different perspectives. It's just passing the buck back and forth, back and forth. It's like, well, I want to express the negative because I feel distressed, but I want to express it to you so you can take the burden and relieve it from me, at least partially, as I say, but I would rather you take the whole thing, and accept it because I deserve the right to bitch. A lot of people who guilt trip other people, I'm not talking about Ron here, but there's a lot of people who want you to be positive while they can be negative. That's the extreme of that. That's where you take on a double indemnity, where they actually guilt trip and complain and do this, but as soon as you say something, you're in the negative. Oh, shut up, you're polluting the air, I'm banning you because, whatever. And this is what the internet does. It actually is a step up because we are being exposed to human nature. We're being exposed to how people are or how they're encouraged to be, how they always were. And you wonder why society is so oppressive to keep all this shit down. Nobody wants to deal with it. We got survival to deal with, So why are children punished for being unruly? Why were they? Why was there child abuse? Because children express these things naturally because it is an upsetting situation. So yes, Take care of your inner child. But if you have a child, you don't take it out to the middle of a Times Square and just demand everybody else take care of it while you go do your thing. You know, you keep that child close to you. The same thing with your own vulnerability with your own child. You don't have to build walls. You don't have to be defensive per se, but you do need to be nurturing to your own child. Nobody else is business, just yours. This is where you become the creator of your own being, or maybe the creator isn't the word, but the overseer, the parent. Be parental to yourself. It's something I've been saying for a while, something others have been saying. But it's easier said than done. It's a process. It can be painful. And it may seem that when somebody talks about these things that they brush off how painful it is. But what can I do? You know, cry as I'm, you know, like Ron used to express all these emotions, and he was always open-hearted and sincere, and everybody loved it. But this was draining him, you know. And eventually now all that Ron that I see Ron has left is disappointment. You know, and that's fine. But from there, it's almost like, okay, where do I go and what do I do? Because Ron was talking about 9-year periods, and things are serious when somebody considers their mortality in that way, considers that, okay, I'm really close to the end or whatever, because then they start manifesting that. And now I'm not talking about denying your mortality. I'm talking about encouraging an extension of it instead of discouraging an extension of it, or buying into the discouraging dynamic, or saying, I'm tired of life. No, that's inaccurate. I'm tired of the way I lived so far. I'm tired of the way life and I have been interacting, or my life has been expressing so far. So do I want to commit to changing that? Whether I succeed or not, that's beside the point. Right now, that issue can only be addressed if I commit. If I don't commit, then success or failure doesn't matter, because I've already condemned myself to this. And people say, oh, I'm tired. Because a lot of people claim, I want to just kill myself. Well, they're just asking for attention, mostly, because anybody who wants to kill themselves just does it. They don't go and warn other people about it, you know. So they want attention, which is another way to just take my problems, take my negativity. But the thing is, we are in the same boat. There is no reservoir. Even if you want to blame God, God has to take all that negativity. What's going to happen to it? Put it in hell, where it's going to just bubble up, because it's a part of us. This is our being. It's not somebody else's. It cannot and should not be taken away. You can't just amputate like an arm, you know, and expect another one to grow back. Where does that rotten material go? There is no bacteria that's going to eat it and chew it up and turn it into compost so it can go back into the so-called biosphere. That hasn't been created yet, where these negative yet, or maybe can't. Maybe something else needs to happen. But again, that's a so-called spiritual level. We can only address this right now within a human, within the social media, shall we say, on a mental level. What can I do here first? And then I can do something here, maybe. But even before that, it has to start here. Decision to take responsibility for my life, meaning to just stand up and start making choices. Even if my choice is to kill myself, it's still an informed choice of considering options, so I know where I stand. So if there is an afterlife, if your own energy is basically what defines that afterlife, or your own emotional state, you're going to be messed up. You know, that's why there's traditions about suicides, you know, having a really bad experience afterwards, going to hell and all of this. You know, because giving up is an option, but if it is an informed option, then, you know, it's in your best interest. Being responsible is in your best interest. Able to respond first, and then responsible in the sense of acting. Okay, that's what I wanted to say about this topic. My whole point was, let's move away from that and into solutions, because that's what I heard the word, you know, in the previous video where I commented. Solutions, maybe not acting out activist solutions, but at least solutions to start. That has always been the premise of doing videos with Ron for me. Thank you, and till next time.
Thank you, Aristo.